Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This one is a character drawing. It's a D&D character for a friend of mine's Dungeons and Dragons campaign that she's on right now. She's a half-orc thing, and while we're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Okay, so here you can see I'm pretty much almost all the way done with most of the drawing. I'm I'm about halfway. Okay, I won't say almost done, but we are in Clip Studio Paint right now. My favorite brush to use during these kind of projects, the painting projects, would be this brush right here. It's called Waterly. It's in the watercolor section of the brushes. It's my favorite one because it has a lot of adjustable features. You can see down in the bottom right hand corner of the screen is the brush settings. You can change them pretty easily. You can add or subtract certain settings you don't want to mess with. It is ridiculously fun and easy to work with. I would not pick any other brush to do paintings with, honestly. I pretty much use the Waterly brush for everything except for the details in her eyes. Her eyes, I basically used the pen and the darker pencil, which I don't use at all, I don't think, during the rest of this painting, so they won't come into play. Maybe I'll highlight them when I do a eye recording or something like that, but as of right now, I'm just kind of going in and refining some of my shadows. You'll see here I'm adding a highlight to the neck area where there would be more light shining on it, and then I move on to the ear. This has always been a difficult part of the human anatomy for me, or orc anatomy in this case, and I think it's just because there are so many different types of ears, and they change so much, and depending on the direction that you're looking, they don't even look like the same thing. I mean, they completely change every time you change where you're, like, it's just ridiculous, and it's slightly frustrating. So I was doing my best to try and make this orc ear look orcish, but also, like, resemble an ear, because that's what it is. So as you can see, I'm just trying to get a lot of the shading in so that it looks a little better. I would highly suggest, if you plan on doing any kind of portrait drawing or anatomy drawings, practice your ears like it's your religion. I definitely probably haven't practiced them enough to be satisfied with myself in them, but this was okay for just a regular old portrait drawing that I wasn't gonna sell or anything like that. But I definitely try to use references if I'm drawing ears, like for a commission. I almost never just freehand it when I'm doing a commission. I almost always grab a reference because, love it. So you can see here I'm adding some more highlights to the side of her face and then to under her eyes a little bit. I had some up on her forehead just because I feel like she'd have a little bit of a brighter spot there. Okay, so now we are moving back to the ear. As you can see, I'm adding a little more highlighting here and there just to make it more realistic. So, doing a little more highlighting under the eye as well. Okay, so here I accidentally was on the same layer. I meant to create a different layer and then draw on that so I could use a multiply layer, and I didn't, so I had to redo it. But the undo button is your best friend in some cases. So there I smoothed it out a little bit. I'm gonna try and add some highlights here, but for some reason these lips really ran me over a couple of times, or tore me a new one, or whatever you want to say, because they did not like me. So yeah, here I am. I'm going in with a smoothing brush, smoothing tool, just trying to erase some of the unnecessary lines there in the ear. Here I am, I'm going in and blocking in the color. I picked a darker midtone this time to start her hair with. I can totally speak English today, guys. So I tried a darker midtone for blocking in her hair. The character does have a darker hair color, so I wanted to start dark and then get light eventually. So here you'll see I'm just doing the top of her hair, and I do all three pieces that I end up, so there's technically 4 pieces of her hair. There's the front half that I'm doing right now, there's the 2 tresses on the sides, and then there's the one in the back. I end up deleting the one in the back, as you'll see in farther on in the video, but as you can see right now, I'm going in and I'm putting in a lighter tone to that, kind of giving it a little bit more flow, kind of directionally challenging the whole hair here. But anyway, I do all 3 layers that I end up doing on this, and on 3 separate layers, 3 separate sections, 3 separate layers. It makes sense so that they don't get kind of overlapped with the rest of the piece, due to the fact that she has green skin. When you're doing brown and green, it can get a little bit confusing sometimes, so you want to keep them separated as much as possible until the last possible second. At the end of this, I don't even really think that I completely corrected that, and I don't think that I merged any of my layers downwards, just to save time. And also, in case I wanted to go back in and just work on her face, I can then hide/unsee, hit the little eyeball next to the layer of the hair, and just work on the hair for a few minutes. So anyway, this is probably about a good 2/3 of the time frame that I'm drawing in this video is just doing her hair. For some reason, painting hair, drawing hair, anything like that, coloring hair, whether it be digitally or painting in real life traditionally, or colored pencils or anything, I absolutely love drawing and painting hair. It's probably my second favorite thing to paint of all time. My first favorite being the eyes. As you can tell, they are ridiculously detailed. But I also wanted to make this so that my friend could hang it up on her wall, so I wanted it to be extremely detailed. Yeah, so that's what this is about. So then, as you can see here, I'm going in with another lighter color of brown/orange. I also realized a couple of months ago I was watching I think I was watching a TikTok or a Instagram video, and the lady was like, I was talking about the color orange, and she was just like, orange is just, or brown is just dark orange. And I like lost my mind over that. I was like telling everybody that fact, and I got so frustrated. I was like, well, now I understand why I always struggled with creating the color orange in high school when I was doing traditional work, because brown, I'm sorry, when I was doing traditional work, because I would always mix like yellows and blues, and it would turn green, and I was like, why isn't this working? I was like, well, because it's more on the orange side, Candace, and not like, it was frustrating. Anyway, so I created another layer and moved on to this. I'm trying to make it a little more realistic, because let's face it, you don't just have like 2 strands down the side of your, shoulders when you pull your hair to the side. So I went with adding a little bit more realism there. And for some reason, on the top of her head, I decided to go with a lighter color first. So I did the base tone, same as I did on the tresses that are falling down her shoulders. But then I also lightened it up on the top half first. And as you can see, I'm not doing that here. I darkened it first, and I think that's mostly for my own personal reference, and as I like to use the dark shadows, especially because they are kind of faded into the background, being technically growing behind her ears, as kind of like a jumping off point as to where I can put the like super bright highlights. And as you can see, like here I am putting in more bright highlights, and then moving to the other side of her head, and I'm blocking in the base tone here. So it was a little too poofy for my taste, so I went ahead and toned it down just a little bit. And then I went in again, kind of refined some of my edges there because I didn't want it to overflow. And now I'm refining my tresses as to what direction and what direction the curl is going. It has been a long day, folks. Yeah, so I just put in all those highlights or the darker tones and highlights. Have mercy. I'm forgetting what things are called now. And I actually go in with a second darker color, and I darken it even more. And I'm pretty sure I did this just because this is going to be pushed back into space. I was trying to make it look like her hair was actually behind her shoulder. So I think I succeeded in that. I absolutely love drawing hair. I could draw hair all day long. Again, pretty sure more than 2/3 of this video is just me drawing this hair, because I do quite a bit on it. Yeah. So one thing I will note, and I'm not drawing this right now, but I will note is that if you are drawing hairlines right next to like their ears, their temples, and their foreheads, I highly advise not using the darkest color first. Now you see I did use a pretty dark color, but that's because her hair is actually dark. I go back in later and I add some baby hairs and some tresses that are just kind of like falling, like almost individual hairs, but a little bit more than that. And I add them in a lighter color. I even add them in a different color completely from what shade her hair is here. And it's due to the fact that I didn't want her hairline to be super stark, nor did I want her hairline to look unrealistically flat, because it bothers me when people do a lot of drawings when the hair suddenly just like starts, but it's a painting. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this, and maybe you haven't, but when I observe hair, if you notice, even dark-haired people will have that section that's like right between their temple and the middle of their forehead, where it's kind of almost like a bald spot, I would say, but it's just like, it's a bunch of baby hairs. It's not quite as thick as the rest of their hair. So, granted, she is an orc, so her hair might be a lot more full. And here I'm gonna be adding them in just a second after I add a few stray tresses here. I wanted to make it a little more realistic than just having some, big pieces of hair down. So in order to make your hairline realistic, try not to go with darker tones, especially near your between your temples and the middle of your forehead. I didn't do that in this video, mostly for the reason that I'm not selling this. If I were definitely going to be selling this portrait, then I would have added that at the time. But she also is an orc, so she might just have thicker hair than the rest of everybody else. But anyway, that's my big advice on hairlines, especially because I notice I used to struggle with it quite a bit, is getting my hairline correct. So here I am moving into the clothing part of the drawing. Clothing is not my favorite. This was just like a little capelet that my friend wanted put in the drawing. She's a D&D character, obviously, so she can pretty much wear whatever she wants. It doesn't have to be accurate to her time frame or anything. So I wasn't super picky about what, she was going to be wearing. Trying to color in all the details here. Boy, I need to learn to save more often. This program, though, Clip Studio Paint, does autosave, so it's not a hyper big deal that you save on your own. It has what's called a recovery save, so in case your computer crashes before you've actually saved it completely, you can go into the recovery file and find it. So here I am. I brought the hair layer on her shoulders forward in space, so here I'm just like refining where the edges are. I make a few mistakes, I have to go to the undo button and redo it and stuff like that, but for the most part that ended up actually turning out super, super good. Better than I was expecting, and again, hair is my favorite thing to draw, so I don't mind having to correct hair. I need to learn to speak English. Let's find out. Okay, so here's where I'm kind of fiddling with my layers, rearranging them, making sure that I'm on the right one. And then I turn on the opacity of the multiply layer for the actual sketch itself. Here up at the top, I'm about to do it. And what that will do for me is it will actually help me be able to see the lines that I need to stay within for getting the capelet drawn out properly. So, yeah, that's what that is. Here I am, just drawing it out. I ran into an issue with this spot, that spot in the hair between her chin and her shoulder later on down the road, and I'll describe how I fix it at a later point. So here I am, I'm blocking in the shadows for the capelet. I typically don't start here. I will usually go in and I will cut out all the negative space from the piece before I start blocking in shadows, and then I lock the transparency of that layer that this capelet is on, which, as you can see from the tray over here is actually the layer that the skin is on. So I have to be careful as to how I paint around the collar or it won't look so hot. At any rate, the next section is going to be sped up to almost 8 times the speed of normal that I was actually drawing. So it's going to be a little bit faster paced as far as like how my brush is going to be moving. But you won't lose any information. I'll try and walk you through everything that I do here. So again, I'm just refining that edge there. And then I go in and I block in all of my shadows for that side of the capelets. Okay, so here I started moving into highlights instead of, or I should say a lighter midtone. Lighter midtone for the cape. I'm just laying it in roughly right now. I don't want it to be super hyper overdone because she is such a dark character. She's like a darker toned character. I don't want to like have it like hot pink. So, and here, right here, I thought that little strand was that the piece that goes across her shoulder was technically a hair strand that's in the multiply layer, and I didn't realize that. So I had to like edit around it and just figure a way of doing it that didn't look utterly awful. So then here I lightened up the highlight even more on my color palette, as you can see in the upper left-hand corner. And I'm going in and I'm just doing it again. I'm refining some of my highlights here, making sure you can see where folds end and folds begin. Go back down to the normal layer, normal level of depth, just to put in a few more shadows or a few more highlights, and then go back up again, right back down. Yeah, so as you can see, I'm getting the hang of like lighting the capelet a lot faster as I'm going through it. I'm not letting the fact that I should be doing one color at a time stop me from actually doing it to its fullest. So, and I honestly highly recommend as long as you like know where you want to put your highlights and shadows, just go ahead and just do it. Like don't let anything stop you from laying in your highlights because you need to do it in a specific order. I have a specific order I do it in, but I honestly really like rules, as I said in my last video. But yeah, I like rules, so I usually do it in that same step process thingy that I was describing. I lay in a mid-tone, then go to shadow, then go to highlight, and that's how I do my thing. So here, I'm trying to bring the hair between her chin and her shoulder forward more. The only unfortunate thing is I was really struggling with getting this little line, okay, to go away. I kept painting it. It didn't look right. The line wasn't straight. It was bothering me. It probably doesn't have to be as straight as I wanted it to be because it's in her shoulder. There would inevitably be a stray hair or two falling over her shoulder with it, so it didn't have to be perfect. But it still bothered me. And I think I go back to it later on too because it still bothered me. So I'm blocking in her corset again, and this time I went for highlights instead of shadows first because this is supposed to be kind of like a pleather fabric, and I knew a lot about how to highlight pleather, not a lot about how to shade pleather. So here I am now getting into the shading and the shadows and stuff and making things a little more dimensional. I still think I could have gone darker over on her left side, my right there. But let's just face it, I pick apart my own art and I'm never good enough, but it's okay. This turned out actually pretty decently and the recipient loved it, so that's what I'm happy about. So she has like this awkward little strap going over, which is what I was just drawing, and then these are like, oh boy, I don't even know how to describe them. They're supposed to be strings that are actually like attaching her corset to her body. So, and then these are the grommets. But it's done in a spiral laced thing. It's done in a spiral lacing fashion, which usually means they're not crossed. You can only see one string going across them. So some people might be confused by that, but it is a spiral corset lacing. I'm not happy with these at all because I just randomly wanted them to be red and it didn't match the purple at all. But you know what? You live and learn. So then here I'm doing just shading in her like little chest that you can see there. And then I add her arm. I almost forgot about this during this process because I thought her capelet would be long enough to cover it. It was not. So here I am just finishing off the arm real quick. And here again is where we are struggling with this dang hair part. So I thought I could rearrange it so that it was big enough, but I ended up having to cut it and paste it onto a second layer. And then what I did from there is I made the piece bigger, so it overlapped all of the seams. And then I think I only had to paint 2 pieces. This little piece up here by her eyebrow, and then just a tiny little bit down on there. And then I had to fix something on the remaining layer for her hair, but other than that, it actually went super well. So I'm working on the background from here. It didn't have to be super detailed, but I wanted it to be interesting enough to hold your attention when you looked at the piece first, or at least interesting enough to hang on a wall. How about that? So I made it to about 3 different colors. That one's actually like a dark blue. The original was like a rust color. I shaded it with, I blended it with the running watercolor pencil in the shading, in the smoothing tool. And I had tried this technique, this background technique, on one other piece I had done a while ago. I fought with it for a while, as you can see, till I found what I liked. It didn't have to be a specific color because I was going to lock the opacity, or I was going to lock the transparency. Of course, now I can't speak English. I was going to lock the transparency anyway, and then just adjust the background as needed. So as you can see, I'm kind of just fiddling with it like a lot because, you know, I can never be happy. So yeah. This is pretty much the ending of this video. Yeah, I'm pretty much just going in. There we go. I found a little spot on her hairline that I didn't like, so I was filling that in because it was a little bit more uneven than I would like. Almost like she plucked one side of her hairline and didn't the other. Oh yeah, and then I forgot her brooch and her earring. So I added her earring. This was not required for the piece, but I always like to give a little bit more dimension, obviously, to my characters by adding like tiny little details like this. I tried not to zoom in. I really did, but I absolutely adore zooming in, especially when it's little details like this to make them even just more realistic. So I cheated on this. I used a circle, and then I shaded it, and then I dropped in a flower because I was lazy. But let's face it, sometimes you just gotta suck it up and you just gotta. So I put that layer on multiply so the flower wouldn't be so bright, and then I went in and actually brightened the little petals myself, and that's how I got the brooch. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this little walkthrough. The finished piece is up next. And there is the finished piece. I really enjoyed this process and making this video for you guys. This is one of my better painting pieces, as I'm still extremely new to the painting process in Clip Studio Paint. I'm very much used to sketching and doodling and doing line arts and coloring pages and stuff, but not used to painting quite yet. This is, I think, my 3rd painting. I also do cross hatches a lot in Clip Studio Paint, which are like paintings, but only in black and white, and you use the same size brush the entire way through the drawing. And you only draw in black and white, so, which I think I already said that, but anyway, those types are really, really fun, but they're not anything compared to this. I still love doing hair in cross-hatching. I still love doing hair in cartoons or in my other styles and stuff, but this semi-realism is like what I could live for. I live and breathe this stuff. It's gorgeous. It's, you know, it obviously needs work. But I love this style of drawing, and it just makes me want to drool. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this process, and I will see you in another video. So long and farewell, my galactic friends.